A certain land is known as the magic realm. This is largely because this realm is a world of magic. Everyone exists with their own specific style of magic, which ranges from the traditional Harry Potter style of flying through the sky with a broom, moving heavy objects with your mind, and creating something out of nothing. Basically, in this world, the occupants are allowed to use magic as they want. Magic itself is seen as a gift bestowed by God. However, knowing magic and mastery of magic are two different things in this realm. This is because the latter guarantees you a high social status in this world. Meanwhile, somewhere in this world, dragons flying around seem to be ordinary. This compared to our protagonist, Mash Burndead, whose very existence defies the natural order. He could easily lift heavy weights like they were weightless. Also, his love for cream puffs cannot be ignored, as it so happens to be the meal he can do anything to obtain. Anything, including having to disobey his 75-year-old father, Regro Burndead. Regro claims and believes in his head that he is a chic and elegant 75-year-old. As much as this is kind of false, he lives alone with his son in a forest far from other humans. I'm sure you're wondering why he has to do such a thing. Well, we'll get to that later. Regro, however, was very reckless when he was young, but now that he's older, he claims that nothing bothers him. He's confident about acquiring different ways to combat stress from his numerous experiences. Surprisingly, while talking about this, his son Mash pulls out the door to get into the house. This scares the hell out of Regro, who screams loudly out of fear. Seeing that it's just his son, he yells at him for ripping out the door. In his defense, Mash states that he couldn't remember if he had to pull or push the door. Hearing him say this, Regro is surprised, since Mash has lived in that house all his life. He angrily continues to yell at Mash, and the latter eventually apologizes to his father, promising to fix the door. Since he had just apologized, Regro stopped yelling. He is pleased with the fact that his son is always so amenable. He thought so soon as the obviously dull-headed Mash tried to fix the door by forcing it into its place. This gets Regro angrier, and he orders Mash to turn the door so it will fit. But he ignores his father and ends up destroying the door. Just as Regro is boiling with anger, Mash promises to fix it again. Later that day, after fixing the door, Regro uses his magic to prepare some tea for his son. While doing so, he asks Mash if he had finished the training routine for the day, and the latter answers yes. Just then, the curious Mash seeks to know why all his training is physical. The question gets Regro thinking about the fact that Mash is not like ordinary people, and can't use magic at all because he is different. He, however, chooses not to tell all this to Mash and promises to give him an answer in the form of a story some other time. After that, Regro heads out. Before doing so, he tells Mash to sit home and not to break the door before he returns. Finally, he orders him never to go into the city. To all this, Mash assures his father that he will follow the instructions given. I guess you thought he would, too. Immediately after his father heads out, he wastes no time and runs straight to the city, seeking a solution to his empty stomach. While walking on the street, he partially covers his face, and looking around, he wonders why everyone is doing even the slightest things with magic, especially since they can just do it with their hands. Shortly after, he arrives at a cream puff shop. When he offers the seller the coins for the puffs, he notices that they have been squeezed. This shocks him to his bones. But the ever-modest Mash apologizes, taking back the coins to fix them. Just then, he bends each coin back in shape. Seeing him do this freaks the seller out. Without wasting much time, he hands Mash his cream puff. In a brief moment, his face is revealed and everyone gets a glimpse of it. Seeing his face, they are all thrilled because he doesn't have a mark which signifies that he has magic. On the other hand, a magic police officer, Brad Coleman, pays attention to the news, where a young, promising student is being talked about. Hearing this, he states that the boy is lucky, and the direct opposite of him who happens to be living a dull life in a dull place. Shortly after, Brad rises from his seat and goes to transfer his frustration to a prisoner, who had been tied and tortured. Seeing him come, the prisoner pleads for mercy. However, he doesn't flinch. This is because he feels the prisoner had given him more work while in pursuit of him. He's determined to make sure the prisoner regrets his actions and never troubles him again. Fortunately for the prisoner, just as he is about to get into the cell, the phone rings, forcing him to halt. Answering the call, he's informed about an unmarked human in the city. Meanwhile, Mash is still unaware of the situation he finds himself in. Just then, he's reminded of his father's words telling him to never go into the city. While he apologizes in his mind, he doesn't regret coming since he got the cream puffs he came for. On his way, he's met by a chubby-looking man in uniform who gets angry because his uniform just has been stained by Mash. When this happens, the man states that he is a proud member of the Magic Police who are tasked with the responsibility of protecting ordinary humans like him. Angrily, he keeps ranting, and to ease his pain, Mash offers him a cream puff. This makes him even more angry because Mash has just offered him a half-eaten cream puff out of pity. He slaps the cream puff out of his hands and goes ahead to start a fresh set of rants. Furthermore, he seeks to know what Mash would be doing about his stained uniform. In response, Mash tears out a large part of the uniform with his enormous strength. He innocently did this with the aim of washing it and returning the clothes to the officer. This makes the officer even angrier. In the middle of his rant, Brad arrives and urges him to stop making a riot. Approaching them, Brad is surprised to see Mash eating, as he wonders why anyone would be eating in this situation. Just as he is about to start asking questions, Regro arrives, grabbing Mash as he runs as fast as he can back to the forest. Watching this happen, Brad is pleased, since he thinks finishing this case would just give him a chance to be promoted. He immediately sends a magic bird to go after them. Back in the forest, Regro yells loudly at Mash for going to the city and ignoring his instructions. The pitiful Mash, seeing how angry his father is, apologizes and promises to never do it again. Seeing him in this state, Regro finds it hard to still be mad at him. However, he orders him to repeat the morning's training routine as punishment. Before leaving, Mash hands his father the rest of the cream puffs he had bought earlier. After he leaves, Regro ponders on how much his son has grown into the opposite of what he thought an adolescent should be. They had lived in the forest to hide Mash from the rest of the world, but he worries now that the Magic Police know about Mash. There could be trouble. Due to this, he ponders upon a possible solution. However, it's already too late, as Brad's bird had already found their location, and now he breaks into the house. At this moment, Mash had just finished the training routine and was heading back home to have some cream puffs. What exactly is this guy's obsession with this snack? Getting home, he's about to go in when he hears unknown voices from within. Apparently, Brad now has Regro cornered and seeks to know where Mash is. He explains the fact that those without magic are not supposed to live at all, demanding to know where Mash is. Even with how much Brad harasses, threatens, and beats him up, Regro refuses to tell him where his son is. His current situation reminds him of his time while growing up without his parents. Everyone had always regarded him as a failure and an outcast, causing him to apologize at almost every point in his life. However, his life changed when he found a baby crying, just as he was about to take his life. Seeing the child, he immediately realizes that they are alike and decides to take care of him. The child made him feel for the first time in his life like he was needed. Remembering this makes him strengthen his resolve to never reveal Mash's whereabouts. When asked again, he screams loudly for Mash to run away. This makes Brad realize that the boy could be close by. He immediately ordered his men to search the area. Just as they approach the door, Mash barges in with a powerful punch to the chin of one of them. This caused the officer to crash through the walls of the house. When the officer Mash had encountered earlier approaches him, he immediately pulls off his uniform like he did earlier. This gets the officer angry, but he's given no chance to rant as Mash follows up with multiple slaps to shut him up. Seeing his son, Regro asks why he didn't run away, but the former states that they are family. Also, he apologizes for being selfish and promises to send the officers to hell, since he is now here. Hearing him say this, Brad laughs loudly. He wonders how Mash intends to take him down without magic. To finish the young boy off, he conjures a powerful spell, which had been used to drive away a dragon previously, throwing it at Mash. Shockingly to everyone, including Regro, Mash shoves the spell off with a backhand slap. The shock seems more evident on Brad's face as he wonders if magic can be easily puffed like that. Just then, he launches another spell, powerful enough to destroy the entire area. As you'd expect, Mash shoves it off once again. Angrily, Brad throws multiple spells at him, and Mash casually juggles them all, after which he uses one of them to dribble the chubby officer, causing them to be more infuriated. Seeing his father's wand on the floor, he picks it up and asks permission from his father to borrow it. Watching him do this, Brad wonders if the boy could actually do magic. Immediately, he sets up a barrier to protect himself from any form of magic the boy would throw at him. However, he's shocked when Mash throws the wand at him, destroying the barrier and leaving a cut on his face. At this point, Brad accepts defeat. He goes on his knees, amazed at never seeing anyone use a magic wand the way Mash had just used it. Meanwhile, having saved his father, Mash threatens Brad to leave his family alone or risk dying at his hands. Seeing his son do all of this, Regro is shocked to his bones. This is largely because he had only asked him to train in order to teach him self-defense. But he was surprised to see how much his son had gone beyond what was physically possible. As much as he is impressed with how much his son has improved, he has a feeling that things will not go as easily now as they used to. On the other hand, Brad suggests that they make a deal. He asks that Mash do what he asks, promising to let him and his father be. He tells Mash about how once a year an exceptional student is revered and called the Divine Visionary. He asks Mash to enroll in a magic school and be chosen as one, mostly since being selected would mean that he has been accepted by God. Acceptance by God, he says, would lead to acceptance by society. However, he only wants the fortune and prestige that comes with it. Hearing all of this, Regro urges his son not to take the deal, but Brad assures them that they will be hunted down for the rest of their lives if Mash refuses. Even though it would be easy for Mash to fend off his attackers, it wouldn't be the same for his old father. Considering this, Mash accepts the deal. This is, however, against his father's wishes. But he assures his father that he is only doing so to make sure that they get to live in peace again. Hearing his son say this makes Regro realize how good the young man is. The stern determination to live in peace with his father leads Mash to the magic school, and he intends to defy a world that doesn't see his existence as natural. He does so with the aim of crushing it with his fist. The Easton Magic Academy, a historic and prestigious school that has produced numerous pillars of the magic realm, will soon undergo its entrance examination, which is notoriously difficult. This is simply because it is a prestigious school and things cannot appear so easy. The students must be thoroughly scrutinized, and not even 3% of the applicants will be admitted. Also, only those with superior magical powers will be able to open the gates of Easton. Some of this year's applicants are scions of established nobility, and the undersecretary's son from the Bureau of Magic. They are very dedicated to achieving success in exams. In a short while, the students are welcomed into Easton Magic Academy as they all settle in to take the exams. An announcement of welcome is made, after which the invigilator appears before them using magic. All the students are amused by this as they make different remarks. He introduces himself as Cloud Lucy and states that he will be overseeing their entrance examination. After introducing himself, he shows off other forms of magic as the students worship him even more. They recognize him to be the Cloud they had heard about. He seems to have mastered all forms of magic. He instructs them to take their seats. As there are no seats in the open arena, they begin to murmur as he uses magic again to create seats and writing materials, and they express their amusement again. However, there is one of them who seems indifferent and does not show any form of amusement at all. Claude notices him and puts a trail on him. He looks out for his success or failure in the entrance examination. He announces that they can begin the exam as they have 30 minutes to finish. The test seems really difficult. He had twisted the questions in such a way that they would revolve around the paper with the use of magic. However, Mash, the indifferent student who was able to complete the exam even before the 30 minutes were up, simply by asking the revolving questions to stay put. Claude is surprised that a student whom he thinks of as a slacker is doing this well. He becomes really furious as he decides to give him a more difficult task. He creates a maze of puzzles and instructs everyone to find their way through each level. They also have only 30 minutes to complete the task. Mash sets out but is interrupted by a young lady who asks if she can tag along with him. He accepts as they set out together. However, she seems to really be a distraction as she keeps getting into little traps. Mash gets tired and decides to leave her behind. She stops him with magic, binding his hands and legs together. Mash breaks free from her trap after finding out that she had deceived him for a selfish purpose. He takes off, leaving her behind. She's attacked by a giant who seeks an answer to his riddles a few minutes later. She falls on her knees and begins to bleed, along with sweating profusely. However, just as the giant is about to attack her, Mash slides in, saving her from his trap. He punches the giant really hard, causing him to land violently and hence being defeated. The girl feels really sorry for behaving badly and also shows her concern for the examination, as they might not be able to make it in time after that has happened. Claude had set up obstructions in every possible way. However, to his utmost surprise, Mash and the girl break through the walls. Claude is very surprised as he lets out a loud scream, because the walls are not ordinary and it's believed that no form of magic can break them. An old man who seems to be one of the people managing the academy watches from afar and also commends Mash, calling him a curious young man. However, all the students turn their backs on him, asking that he be disqualified since he broke the rules, and it was wrong to break through the puzzle. They ask that he go back home. Mash, on the other hand, also wants to go home. The girl that he had saved earlier interrupts everyone, asking that they pardon him. Claude tries to stop her from speaking, but she ignores him and continues with her speech. She states that he had asked her to intentionally prevent Mash from passing the exams so that he could pass her. She had agreed to do this because her parents are very poor, and getting into the academy is a new dawn for them. And it's also a way by which she can make them proud. Claude becomes really angry and decides to fail the both of them, stating that nothing is wrong with failing two students that he did not like in the first place. He says that he will fail them except if he can be challenged, and he's quite sure that no one can challenge a professor like himself. It is definitely a lost battle, and it will be a rather foolish for one to take up the challenge of fighting a lost battle. Mash breaks his wand stick and says that he is going rather too far. The students are bewildered as they react with speech and facial expressions that show disapproval and shock. Someone is standing up to a professor? This has never happened in the history of that particular academy. Claude becomes really furious, and just as he prepares to lash out, the headmaster, whose name is Master Wahlberg, appears to interrupt the mini-battle. He beckons on everyone to be silent, as they will begin the final interview immediately. He also states that from that point on, he will take charge of the examination. He tells Claude to meet him at his office after the examination. Lucy suddenly retires from his troublesome administration, as the headmaster seems to have taken full charge of the examination. He uses magic to teleport Mash into the interview room. As it's time for their interview, he announces that they will now begin with the final interview for Mash. He thanks the master for having him while he is asked his first question, which was to state why he chose the academy. He looks around the room as he stares discreetly at the other people in the room, after which he states his reason for choosing the academy, which is to live in peace with his family. One of them states that he has not given the right answer, which is why another member also protests. However, they are silenced by the headmaster, who states that it is fine. He moves on to the next question, which is to inquire if he truly saved a girl in the maze test, even though he's aware that there is less time to solve the maze puzzle. He replies, saying he saved her. The headmaster then asks to know what mandated him to save her by risking that she should fail the test. He states that he felt that he would regret it if he hadn't saved her at the time. The headmaster recognizes him as one of those who seems to think before acting. He also states that he is one of a kind for saving the girl, even after knowing that he might not be able to break through the walls. Mash only looks straight as the headmaster states that he can only approach a situation like that the way he had did, because he does not have a clear understanding of the ways of the world yet. He also states that there are many creatures who are stronger than him in the world. The headmaster asks if he were to face something that overwhelmingly surpassed him, he would still be able to take such action. The rooms transform into a stormy place after the question, leaving Mash in disarray. Mash is calm, even with the turn of events, as he asks what the whole drama is about. The headmaster states that the giant figure standing before him is an ancient spell that transfers the soul of the target's most cherished one into a doll. He states that if a knife is stabbed at the doll, the being might never return, and his or her existence will be forgotten forever. Mash pierces himself with a knife even before the old man could finish talking, as he states that he cannot keep something as large as that forever. He pierces further through himself as the master is bewildered and also reminds him again that he is helpless. He ignores the headmaster, who states that he is in an endurance test. Everyone marvels at his wisdom as they are forced to give remarks alongside the look on their faces. Even the headmaster is not left out at this point. He is very surprised at the turn of events. He continues by explaining that power can be used to harm or help. It all depends on the wielder of that power. He also states that it is the reason he has emphasized protecting the weak and regulating the strong. He teaches further, stating that the noblesse oblige is one's capacity as a powerful being. The headmaster is convinced that Mash is a kind of person who processes the capacity according to his observations. Mash could not possibly have pulled off those things without his mindset and capacity to assist others. The room changes from a harsh environment created by magic into a bright setting of candles and aesthetic pictures. He apologizes for any inconvenience he must have caused to Mash, as he was only in the process of testing him. The headmaster is obviously not someone to assume that kind of scary nature for nothing special. He had gone that far to test Mash. Mash tells him it is nothing, but proceeds to say something else as the headmaster listens with keen interest. He replies to the question his master had asked earlier, stating that if he had to face the headmaster, he would knock the stuffing out of him with his fist without hesitation. The headmaster is surprised as one of the professors lashes out and unleashes her anger, stating that Mash is insolent. She remarks that he is insane to have said such a thing without fear. The headmaster ignores this and only chuckles, after which he welcomes him to Easton Magic Academy. A lot of things had happened. However, Mash had passed the entrance examination for Easton Magic Academy. They attend their first class as the professor teaches them one of the most basic spells, which is the lock opening spell. She states that they must imagine opening the lock as they infuse it with magic energy. She then performs the spell in their presence and tells them to try it out one by one. To the surprise of everyone, instead of casting the spell, Mash breaks the lock into two, after which he reports that he had opened the lock successfully. The professor becomes very angry as she rages like a fire that cannot be put out. She remarks that he had done rubbish, as this is definitely not what she expected of him. She remarks that he is in magic school, and the academy is not an ordinary place, nor is it a place to play around. He replies calmly, stating that he is not good with magic or whatever she is teaching, as she becomes even more infuriated and also tries to know what he is doing at the academy if he has no sense of magic. She is bothered as to how he had even gotten into the academy with its tight scrutiny in the first place. He replies even more calmly than ever that it looks like it is destiny, as she flares up even more, asking why he is so indifferent about something so serious and what kind of nerves he has. The other students watched in disbelief. A student who has been watching the whole scene is irritated by Mash and wishes that he is never a roommate with that kind of person, since they are in boarding school. However, things did not turn out well for him as he checked out of his room, only to see that the door had been removed and Mash tapped him from behind. He let out a short scream, hiding his irritated expression, after which he composes himself, introduces himself as Finn Ames, and also backs up his sentence with nice remarks, such as that he is happy to be his roommate. He introduces himself as Mash Burnhead, and states that he does not really know a lot, but he might cause trouble, and it's also nice to be his roommate. Finn finds him a little simple until he introduces his biceps as Kevin and Mark. Mash inquires to know how one can get into the school's Divine Visionary. Finn explains that one has to gather coins and do some school activities to get there. Still in magic school, the hidden secret that Mash cannot use magic remains hidden to everyone except him. Instead of figuring out a way to settle this very important issue, he spends his time eating his favorite snack, cream puffs. While doing so, he remembers that they would be having a broom flying class the next day, and he surprisingly has no broom for the class. Upon realizing this, he asks Finn to lend him his broom, stating that he had mistakenly brought a burdock instead of a broom. Seeing the burdock, Finn is shocked to his bones. He wonders how a person would mistake a burdock for a broom. I mean, they are two completely different things, although they seem alike in some ways. The next day, the students gather around the broom class. There they are expected to learn how to ride a broom. While the teacher addresses them, she instructs them to channel magic energy into their brooms and command it to fly. After that, they are to straddle it and regulate the magic to keep it afloat. As easy as this might sound, the students were unable to go through this with even the first instruction, as they found it really difficult to command their brooms to fly. On the other hand, Mash continues to be determined to become the #1 student and restore a peaceful life for him and his father. To do this, however, he would have to pass this class. But without magic, this would be difficult. He tries his best to get the broom to float at least a bit, and it doesn't. After multiple tries, he's stopped by a deafening silence. One of the students who saw him do this laughs at him for being unable to float his broom, further stating that Mash should be in the remedial class and is only slowing the rest of the class down. Not wanting to be mocked further, Mash channels his strength and steps powerfully on the ground, causing his broom to float into his hands. Then, in a sly move, he utters the word fly. This act confuses the hell out of the student, who states that Mash just cheated, since he already had the broom in his hand before he said fly. Meanwhile, the other students have finally been able to float their brooms, so the teacher states that it's time to evaluate how fast they can go. This would begin what she calls the timed trials. Hearing this, the student senses that it would be the perfect opportunity to prove just how much better he is than Mash. He challenges the latter to a race, stating that the loser would have to obey the winner for as long as they are in the academy. Without thinking much about it, Mash accepts the deal, and the two get set to begin the race. The student, however, is very confident that he would win the race since he has been riding brooms since middle school. This, he assumes, makes him better than a transfer with no known history. He remains extra confident that he would not lose to someone like Mash, and is all ready to prove his point as soon as he can. On the other hand, the teacher recognizes Mash as the class clown of the day before. She wonders if he knows how to ride a broom. Shortly after, she calls for them to be on their marks, set, and go. Immediately, Mash leaves the student behind in extraordinary speed. The student remains standing, shocked at what has happened. He remains stunned and in doubt at what he just witnessed. The teacher, on the other hand, is extremely surprised to see a new world record for broom racing being set. The other students claim they didn't even see Mash when he moved. One person, however, had a good look and was able to see what really happened: Finn. He claims to have seen Mash throw the broom into the air as soon as the race began, and then use his strength to raise himself on the broom, using air resistance to reduce his speed and mounting the broom in midair. He wonders how such a thing is possible. Meanwhile, the student gets angry as he blurts out that Mash cheated. Seeing him, Mash feels bad for him for not facing the facts and accepting defeat. He decides to drop the terms of the bet they had made earlier, since he feels sorry for him. While he intends to keep ranting, he is stopped by a top student in the school named Kavil Lloyd. Kavil steps forward and apologizes on the other students' behalf, claiming that they are friends. Seeing this, the other students, who seem to know something about Kavil that Mash doesn't, decide to stay out of the situation. Kavil claims that Mash's actions have impressed him and asks that they be friends, and the ignorant Mash accepts. Just as they are about to seal their friendship with a handshake, the teacher interrupts them, stating that they are in the middle of class. Just then, Kavil tells him, his new friend, Mash, that they should meet here after school that day. Later that day, Kavil meets with the student who had challenged Mash earlier, and we realize that the student had actually been sent by Kavil. However, he is angry that the student failed to do something so simple as messing with Mash. As punishment, he continuously punches the student in the face. Eventually, he stops when he realizes that he might have just found a new toy in Mash. If only he really knew who he was dealing with. At that moment, Mash and Finn are walking past the hallway, and he asks Finn who Kavil is, and why everyone is afraid of him. In response, he is told that Kavil is the son of a high-ranking member of the Bureau of Magic. And since the Bureau of Magic is absolute in the realm, Kavil possesses some authoritative powers amongst the other students. Also, due to his father's influence, the vice principal of the school pays special attention to Kavil's needs. Crossing Kavil could lead to expulsion from the school. However, the torture of crossing them could go beyond just expulsion, as some students who were forced to drop out got to experience even worse after. This, he says, is why nobody wants to cross Cavill in school. After school, instead of going to meet Cavill like they had agreed, Mash spends his time in the kitchen making cream puffs. When he tastes them, he wishes his father was here with him to taste them too. His thoughts are halted by the words of Brad, threatening to hunt him and his father down if he failed to become the top student in the academy. This makes him determined once again to go through with this. Although he feels like he's forgetting something and remembers his earlier agreed upon appointment with Cavill. This, however, doesn't bother him much. Later that day in class, Mash brings out his textbook to find out that it has been destroyed. While he wonders how, he assumes his textbooks are falling apart. Just then, Cavill comes to meet him, asking why he didn't come to meet him. In response, he says he was making cream puffs. As much as this annoyed Cavill, he tried to keep a straight face. Then he talks about Mash's dream to become a divine visionary. He offers to put in a good word for him to the vice principal, if only Mash does, as he says, and obeys him. For starters, Cavill orders him to do some menial jobs, like carry their books, broom, and other school stuff for them. Clean his shoes, get him a drink, massage his shoulders, do something funny. All these Mash did without thinking much of it. All because he thought Cavill really wanted to help him. The next day in class, Mash brings out his textbook to see that it has once again been destroyed. Again, he assumes that the books are just falling apart. Then he asks Finn for his. Finn, however, gets scared and refuses, but eventually does so when Mash refers to him as a good friend. Later that day, Mash meets with Cavill and his two friends, and they make him clean water off the ground. While doing so, they all walk away, leaving him behind. In the midst of this latest chore, he feels Finn's textbook is in his coat and decides to seek him out in order to return it. At that exact moment, Finn gets confronted by Cavill. At this point, we are made to realize that he is responsible for Mash's destroyed textbooks. However, all this had been on Cavill's orders. This time, Cavill orders him to burn Mash's uniform, since destroying his books is not enough to force him into dropping out. Feeling guilty about his previous actions towards his friend, Finn refuses to go ahead with this. This causes Cavill to smash Finn's head to the ground using magic. At this point, Mash, who was still looking all around for Finn, finds his friend with his head on the ground and bleeding. Just then, Finn apologizes for what he had done, stating that it was all due to orders he got from Cavill, and he couldn't resist. He says he decided to stop after Mash called him his friend. Cavill, on the other hand, is unbothered about this, stating that Finn owes him an apology and invites Mash for a meal with the vice principal. He assumes Mash would continue to be the dumb and gullible boy that they think he is. While talking, Mash walks towards him and grabs his hair, smashing his face to the ground. This shocks the hell out of his friends and Finn, who see Cavill as being untouchable. He states that Cavill should be the one to apologize. Unfortunately, the vice principal is just around the corner and witnesses all that has happened. He threatens to hold a school conference regarding the involvement of Finn and Mash in this violent incident. He says this because they have just toiled with someone of a very different social status from them. He breaks it down, stating that different social status means different treatment, calling them idiots for not figuring that out. While the vice principal blabs on, Mash hurriedly kicks him in the face to shut him up. This gets the vice principal very angry as he threatens to easily expel an ordinary student like Mash anytime. Due to this, Mash digs up the ground and throws him in, stating a threat of his own. He lets the vice principal know that just as he can expel any student anytime, he can also be buried anytime. When the vice principal shows no remorse, Mash goes ahead with burying him, leaving him screaming loudly. These actions cause Mash to be summoned by the principal, who states the reason why Mash had been summoned. Then he shows Mash the decision of the Bureau of Magic, who sent a letter, stating that he be expelled immediately. He lets Mash know that the Bureau is the highest decision-making body in the land, and what they say is absolute, coupled with the fact that his actions are unforgivable. However, he despises a world where the caring are at a disadvantage, and this causes him to blatantly ignore the order from the Bureau. This he does by burning the notice being sent to him. He reveals that his concern for the current state of the world caused him to take this position several years ago. He's impressed by Mash's actions of sacrificing himself and acting in the face of injustice. This, he claims, is what the divine visionaries should be all about. With this, he hopes Mash gets a chance to become a divine missionary. Hearing this, Mash is moved, as he claims he already intended to do so. However, to do so, Mash must be the top student in the academy, which would require gathering enough coins through schoolwork and activities. Although the coins are different and are categorized in gold, silver, and brass. As expected, those with a certain number of gold coins are regarded more than others. He asks that Mash acquire as many coins as he can from his schoolwork and activities, while he, on the other hand, handles the vice principal and Bureau of Magic. Eventually, Mash faced no punishment for his actions and was acknowledged by other students for his actions towards the notorious Cavill and the vice principal. Later in the day, while walking with Finn, he is confronted by a student, Tom Knowles, who asks him to represent Alderdorm in a duel match. Apparently, Tom is a great sportsman and the last year's duel MVP. Mash seems to know nothing about this, and he doesn't feel interested. However, Tom continues to convince him, recounting his extraordinary skill in the broom race. Eventually, Mash is forced to accept. The next day, the competition begins and the others get competitive midair, while Mash remains on the ground. He continues to tell himself that he cannot fly. However, when he remembers his father, and just how important it is for him to go ahead with this, and his aim to get the required number of coins, he decides to figure out a way. Did you enjoy this recap? If you did, kindly like this video and subscribe to our channel, so we can bring you the recap of the next episodes. Until next time, do take care and stay safe.